Hey everybody, hope you're doing good. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a droplet generator in Houdini, which is pretty useful when you're rendering like cans or drinks, something where you need that condensation on the surface. And yeah, let's get started. By the way, if you don't want to set this all up yourself, I created an HDA out of this, which you can grab on Gumroad for a couple bucks. So I'm just going to show you guys real quick how to use it. So you've got control for the number of droplets here. Then you've also got a seed, size and shape. So you get this ramp, which you can use to control the distribution of the size of the droplets. Very useful. So the way I have it set up, we get a few very big ones, and then the rest go from like small to medium-ish, and you get a lot of control using this method of using a ramp. Then you've got a global size multiplier, and same thing for the height. All right, and then you've got this roundness slider, which if you bring it down, you'll see some of the droplets get more oval, and there's also a rotation seed for that. Let's put it back. Next up, I don't know if you can see, but some droplets have this kind of wonky shape to them, like in real life. So you can control the amplitude of that noise, as well as the element size, and an offset if you want some variation. And then you've got subdivision levels, which is pretty nifty. Alright, then in masking, you can use a mask attribute. So if I go here and paint a mask, I already have, you can see it's going to use that mask attribute. And you can also avoid sharp edges, right? If you don't want any droplets here, for example, you can visualize this. You've got a blur control to kind of make it spread out more, and then a remap here. So yeah, this is very useful to avoid getting droplets like on a sharp angle. I mean, and you can use this at the same time as a mask, which is very useful. Then we've got de-intersection. This is really useful when you've got a ton of droplets and they start to intersect with each other, but it is very slow. So make sure you do all your setup and then turn it on at the very end, because you're going to be waiting a little while. And finally, we've got the offset from surface. So if I do a clip here, for rendering, you want to make sure the droplets intersect with the mesh here. So yeah, you can control that offset. And that's it. Check it out on Gumroad. All right, let's move on to the tutorial now. All right, so let's get started by creating the droplets. I'm going to start with a cube actually, because we want a rounded cube and not a sphere. So I'm going to take a cube, subdivide it a couple times, and then let's add a sphere. Let's make this polygons and turn this way up. And then if we look at it, if we preview this one, we want to scale up our cube until it just barely touches the edge here. Something like that. And then we can ray it to our sphere. And yeah, as you can see, it makes it round. Cool. And we want this geometry so that what we can do is group all the bottom points here. So let's change it to points, keep by normals. Let's do -1 for our axis, -1 in the Y direction, and then just select these points, which we can now use that selection, group 1, and scale it to 0 on the Y-axis. And that gives us our half dome shape. Cool, now I'm going to bevel the edge here. So let's select this. Oops, there we go. Let's go point something like this. Nice. Then I want to control the height of it because it's way too tall right now. So I can just do this. Let's go 0.5. And we can throw a subdivide on it, make it a bit smoother. Cool. And now what we want to do before moving on is actually group all the points on the bottom here. So again, let's call it bottom, change it to points, and keep at normals. Again, -1 on the y-axis, and turn it way down. Something like this. We're going to be using this selection later. Cool. So now let's create a geometry to actually scatter this onto. I'm going to go with a pig head. Let's subdivide it a bunch. Something like this. Let's also add some normals. Oops. There we go. And then I'm gonna scatter some points on it. Obviously, let's go with like something like this. And then do a copy to points. Boom, boom. All right, looking good. So the droplets are way too big. I'm gonna scale them down. Something like this. Actually, let me preview both at the same time. There we go. We also need to rotate them so they lay flat. Nice, so we've got the base for our setup here. So what we want to do now is randomize the scale. So you've got a few options to do this. You could do an attribute randomize and just use p-scale, but you don't get a remap ramp, which we do want. If you do attribute adjust float, same thing, you don't get a ramp here. So instead we're going to use vex. So let's drop down a wrangle, and in here I'm going to rename it to randomize p-scale. And what we want to do is say at p-scale. Whoops. And for now we're going to do random value based on the point number. So you can see this randomizes the value, which is cool, good start. But we want to use a ramp to control this. So we can do a channel ramp, name it size ramp, and we just need another bracket here. Let's create that ramp. And so now what we get is a more control over the distribution of the different sizes. So as I set it up here, you can see, actually, let me add a color to droplets, make them easier to see. So as you can see, we've got a few very big ones, which is this right here. And then most of them go from like small to medium-ish. But if you want like mostly big ones and a few really small ones, you can do that too. So yeah, you've got more control over the distribution of the size. So I'm gonna do something like this. I think I can make it a little bit bigger. So we have some really big ones like this. All right, that looks pretty good to me. There's our control for the size. Another thing I want to do is kind of add some variation in the shape of the droplets, because they're currently all perfectly round, and I want some of them to be more oval. So the way you can do that is using scale. So I'm going to do scale.x equals 1, and then copy this, oops, paste it, and do y and z. Now we're only going to be controlling the scale on the x-axis. So let's do again rand at ptnum, and let's add a seed just so we don't get the same distribution. And yeah, it kind of works, but it goes from 0 to 1, and these are values that are pretty close to 0, which means, actually, let me show you. Scale, yeah, almost at 0, which means they're super thin, which we don't want. So we can do a fit 01 and then go from like 0.75 to 1. That's better. So we just get a little bit of oops. Let me compare before and after here. Yeah, just a little bit of variation. Alright, that's good. But if I do this, you can see they're all kind of pointing in the same direction. So if we want to add some randomness, what you can do is randomize the orientation, for which I will use a mobs randomize. If you don't have mobs, I really recommend installing it. It's free and very useful. Just click randomize orientation, and it works, but you can see it randomizes on all 3 axes, and we only want the z-axis. So I'm just going to zero out the other ones, and boom, there we go, some randomness. By the way, if you want to do this without mobs, you can do so with Vex, but I forget the code. You can find a tutorial online, but really, I mean, this node is so useful. It's just almost one-click solution. Cool. Let's turn this back off. Alright, so we've got our random oval shape for some droplets, giving us some variation in the shape, which is nice. So what next? Well, if you look at, let's look at this one. You can see, actually, let me find another one. Maybe this one. Yeah. You can see that the droplet is completely flat, whereas our pig surface isn't. And it doesn't actually follow the curvature of our surface. So the way you fix that is by using this bottom group we created. I'm just gonna blast everything else. Delete non-selected, so we're left with only the flat part of the droplet, and then we can array it to our geometry, just like so. Let's do minimum distance. All right, so you can see it raise it onto geometry, which is what we want, and then if we use a point deform, so we're gonna use our original droplets as the mesh to deform. Res geometry is gonna be the flat bottom part, and then the deformed bottom part is gonna, go in here. And you can see it deforms the entire droplet to kind of follow the curve of the mesh. Let's preview this. But as you can see, it doesn't quite work, even if I lower this. No change. So the workaround I found is to use the AE library point deform, which I'm not exactly sure why, but it just works. Whoops. Yeah, as you can see now, it works exactly as we want it. Okay, so one problem that arises here is that if we do a clip, you can see that the droplets are like just very slightly intersecting with our geometry, and we actually want them to intersect all the way. So right here, let's add a peak. Move it down just a little bit. There we go. That's gonna look correct when you go to render it. Speaking of which, I'm gonna add some materials on this, and then show you guys how to render. Alright, I just brought in my default scene setup here. Let's look through our camera, and let's launch a render. Alright, so let's have a look at the droplets. As you can see, they look decent, but we can make them look a lot better. The way we do that is to turn on caustics. That's really it. So let me make a snapshot of this and then turn on caustics. Let's go bucket render. And yeah, as you can see, it's a massive difference. Looks much better with caustics. Let's try Photon. I found that for this application, Photon just doesn't work that well compared to brute force. Yeah, so this is Photon and this is brute force. So as you can see, it does look a lot better using brute force caustics. Alright, and that's it. Again, check out the HDA on Gumroad. It has a bunch more controls that are very useful. And yeah, you can grab it for a couple bucks. Alright, thank you guys. I hope you learned something and see you next time.